Coming up on our next episode of America's Hope, Larry Elder joins us to talk about the realities of what's going on with fatherless children. And then we'll talk to the notable Dr. Ming Wang, an incredible story of how he fled Chinese persecution and came to America to launch his American dream and giving sight to the blind. Stories that you don't want to miss on our next episode of America's Hope. Good evening, I'm Kelly Wright, and this is America's Hope. So glad you could join us this hour. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to be talking to Larry Elder in just a few moments from now, who's going to address the issue that's going on throughout America, fatherlessness, and what it means for the youth of this country. And then we'll introduce you to the renowned Dr. Ming Wang, a man who fled communist China, coming to America without ever knowing the language and rising to the top of his profession. Oh, and by the way, giving sight to the blind, literally. We'll talk to him, all that and more, in this powerful episode of America's Hope. Let's get started. And you know what really matters? What we do with our lives in terms of how we govern ourselves and how we stand up to be true Americans. Well, I can't think of another person who does it in such an exemplary way. And yeah, he draws some heat from it because he makes sure that he makes a stand. His name is Larry Elder, and he joins me now on America's Hope. So good to see you, Larry. Welcome to America's Hope. You know, you talk about faith, you talk about freedom. You got a brand new book out, As Goes California. So let's talk about that first. What happens as goes California?
Well, I wrote the book, Kelly, because of my race in the recall election back in 2021 when Gavin Newsom faced a recall election because voters got angry over the way he shut down the state in a more severe way than anybody else did because of COVID. While sitting up there at that restaurant in Napa Valley, incurring a $12 wine tab with the very people that drafted the mandates, he was not wearing a mask, he was not engaging in social distancing. So the book is about my challenge to unsung and what happened. And then I talk a little bit about my background, why I got into radio, my mom, my dad. At the time, I had not yet decided to run for president, but I talked about what my agenda would be if I decided to do so. And then, of course, later on, I did. So that's what the book is all about. And it's a nice, breezy read. People don't like to read these days, but it's an easy read. I think people will understand what goes on in California affects everything. I've always said it. For every bad idea outside of California, Californians have tried it twice. You name it, taxes, spending, regulating, to the point where for the first time in California's 173-year history, Kelly, people are leaving the state. In the last 3 years, a net loss of 1 million people versus a net gain in, say, Florida of 700,000 people, largely because of the cost of living, twice as much of a home compared to Florida. We're about 200% above the national average, and the number one reason that people cite when they leave California is they cannot afford the price of a home.
You talked about running for president. You did that. You suspended your campaign.
Right.
But have you ever reconsidered? Do you think you might get back into it?
I don't think so. And I ran not necessarily thinking I was going to win, although of course that would have been great. I ran as a mega candidate. We already have a guy that's a mega candidate. His name is Donald J. Trump. Why then did I do it, Kelly? I did it because even Trump is not talking about some issues that I think are absolutely vital. Namely, the number one social in America, in my humble opinion, is the epidemic of fatherlessness. 70% of black kids today enter the world without a father in the home, married to the mother, up from 25% back in 1965. 25% of white kids now enter the world without a father in the home, married to the mother. 40% of all kids do. A substantial increase from the mid-60s. A Democrat named Lyndon Johnson launched a so-called war on poverty, and since then, we've incentivized women to marry the government and incentivize men to abandon their financial and moral responsibility. Kelly, the numbers are clear. When you're raised without a dad, you're 5 times more likely to be poor and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times were locked up in jail, and nobody's talking about it. The left doesn't talk about it because they created the problem. Our side does not talk about it for fear of being called systemically racist. And if you're black, you'll be called, as I was by the LA Times, wait for it, the black face of white supremacy. So nobody's talking about what I think is the number one social problem in America.
Let's talk about it then. We're here. We're two African American men who grew up in this country, a country that we
Right.
dearly love. By the way, I was raised by a single parent mom. And my mother meant the world to me, and she helped me become the man I am today. But to your point, a father not in the home, sometimes that can lead to devastation and destruction in a child's life.
Yeah, and it certainly is not a death sentence, as you pointed out. Dr. Ben Carson also was raised by a single. She could have gone on
Indeed.
welfare, but took a lot of jobs because she wanted to show her kids that example. My father did not know his biological father. He was raised by a single mom. Unfortunately, unlike your mom, Dr. Carson's mom, his mom was extremely irresponsible. She was illiterate. She lived off a series of men, one of whom was named Elder. He did not my dad. My dad just started using his name because he was the man of a series of men who's in his life the longest. My dad comes home at the age of 13, Kelly, starts quarreling with his mom's then boyfriend. Elder was long gone. The mom sides with the boyfriend and throws my father out of the house, never to return. Athens, Georgia, Jim Crow South at the beginning of the Great Depression. And my dad literally picked up trash, did whatever he could. Ultimately, he became a Marine in World War II, got out, could not job as a cook, even though he was a cook during the Marines, and ended up going back to LA, where he had been before the war because he was serving as a Pullman porter. They were the largest private employer of blacks in those days. And this little black boy from Athens, Georgia, Kelly, goes to this place called California, in a city called LA, and you could walk in the front door of a restaurant and heard. My dad made a mental note, maybe someday I'll relocate to California. When the war was over, he did just that. Cleaned toilets, 2 full-time jobs cleaning toilets, saved his nickels and dimes, started a small little cafe. In his late every time he owned that cafe, he owned the property next door to it, plus a little home that's still in our family. Not too shabby. And my dad, Kelly, was a lifelong Republican. My mom, a lifelong Democrat. You should have been a fly on the wall across the dinner table. My dad said this: hard work wins. You get out of life what you put into it. You cannot control the outcome, Larry, but you are 100% in control of the effort. Before you moan or groan about what somebody did to you or say to the nearest mirror, ask yourself, what could I have done to change the outcome? And finally, he said this: no matter how hard you work, how good you are, sooner or later, bad things are going to happen to you. How you deal with those bad things, your mother and me, if we raised a man. My mother always told my brothers and me the following: nobody can make you feel inferior without your permission. So I was blessed to have two hardworking parents who stayed together for 56 years and raised us and gave us the right kinds of values to believe in ourselves, take advantage of the fact that we were born in the greatest country God ever created, the United States of America.
Larry, I applaud your parents for doing the right thing and standing by you. And knowing you the way I think I know you, they probably had a lot of strong ethics that they wanted to impose upon you. And if you went against their will, they let you know that their will is stronger. They probably carried a big stick.
You know, Kelly, I've often said out here in California, we have a bunch of smash and grabs. Now, many of the people involved wear masks, and you can't say all of them are people of color, but many of the ones who get bust back people of color. And if I were to do something like that, Kelly, I'd be more afraid of my father
Yeah.
than I'd be afraid of the cops. And right now, they're afraid of neither because the police are understaffed. The morale has never been lower because of this defund the police movement. The notion that the police are engaging in systemic racism is causing what's called the George Floyd effect or the Ferguson effect. And that is the phenomenon of cops pulling back from their normal proactive policing. As a result, crime up, but arrests are down. And those people that are now being hurt, black and brown people living in the inner city, that people on the left, like Gavin Newsom, as I point out in my book, purport to care about.
How do we get to a point of doing what I like to say, the greatness of our nation begins in the homes of our people? And if we lose that, then we ruin our nation.
No question about it. The first thing is we have to sound the alarm and tell people what's going on, and there is a real crisis. About 2 weeks ago, I suspended my campaign, and I had a meeting with Donald Trump at his office in Mar-a-Lago. And I said, please begin talking about the epidemic of fatherlessness. To his credit, he put out a tweet and said that Larry's been sounding the alarm on this issue and we need to discuss this more often. And I told him this. According to a source, a black male, Kelly, aged 10 to 43, is 13 times more likely murdered than a white male in the same demo. And Trump was flabbergasted. He said, "What's your source on that?" I said, "The Center for Disease Control. Have you heard of it?" He started laughing. And I said, "The number one cause of preventable death for a white male 19 and under is accidents, like car accidents or drownings or drug overdoses. The number one cause of death for a 19-year-old black male and under, homicide, almost always at the hands of another young black male. Blacks account for 60% of the homicides, the shootings in America. Now, unless you're prepared to say that black people are just genetically inclined to commit more crime, you have to ask yourself, if it isn't the epidemic of fatherlessness, please tell me what it is." And I put that question to Charlemagne the God when I was on his show a few weeks ago, and he had no answer. He hadn't really thought about it.
America's Hope continues in a moment. That not many people are paying attention to the activities that go on in our communities and what's happening to young black men. I've been fortunate enough to talk to a lot of mentors who are on the front lines, if you will, in places like Chicago, where they're on point, or in Washington D.C. They're out there actually talking to the young kids. And the problem, Larry, is getting to the home so that mom and that fatherless child have a chance to find a way to get the tools that will help them become successful and productive rather than destructive and falling into a state of despair. So I hear you loudly. What do we do about the problem? That's what I'm asking. Where's the solution?
Yeah, I was campaigning in Iowa, a town called Johnston, and it was around 26,000 people. And I talked to their police chief. He was a white man. The town was 99.9 white, something like that. And I said, "Do you have a gang problem?" He said, "We do. Not like Chicago, we have a gang problem." I said, "What's the common theme?" He said, "Lack of a responsible male role model, whether it's a father or grandfather or parent or a teacher or a member of the clergy, nobody like that in their lives. These kids, Kelly, need mentors." And I'm urging all the people in my generation, the baby boomers, that are now retiring or about ready to retire, we're still vigorous, that they've raised their children, raised their grandchildren, they've got life wisdom. We all ought to step up and volunteer to be mentors. Every one of these kids walking around without a male figure should be able to pick up a smartphone and call somebody in counseling. A la Alcoholics Anonymous. You have a sponsor, and when you feel weak, you feel a moment that you need guidance, you call your sponsor. Everybody should step up and volunteer. If you don't want to do that or can't do that, they need resources. My church is the Calvary Chapel Church out here in Chino Hills. We literally have programs. We go door to door, including in places like Harlem, and offer mentorship to kids. And they're receptive, but they need more resources. We're spending a lot of money at capital level, on programs that just don't work. We ought to be able to take those tax dollars and direct them towards programs in our own neighborhoods, including programs that are done by members of that prove to work. People in the community know what's going on. They need the resources. We should be doing.
Concur with you so strongly on that, because we have to roll up our sleeves and get involved. And there's no excuse for us not to be involved. Anyone who's achieved any modicum of success, I'm not talking about having a lot of bank and the money in the bank. I'm talking about what's in your heart, what's in your soul. What have you learned that you can pass on to the future generation and to keep the kids from going the wrong way?
Absolutely. And we need to tell people they are not victims. There was a study done by Time Magazine and CNN in 1997. We're talking about 26 years ago. And both black teens and white teens were asked whether racism is a major problem in the country. And both of them said yes. But then the black teens were asked the following questions. Is racism a big problem, a small problem, or no problem in your own daily life? 8% of them said it was a small problem or no problem in my own daily life. In fact, twice as many black kids than white kids said, quote, "Fear to take advantage of available opportunities is a bigger problem than racism," close quote. And that was before Obama got elected and reelected. So black kids know what's going on. They just need encouragement. And it doesn't help when somebody like Joe Biden goes to Howard University, as he did a few months ago, giving a commencement enlistment exercise and telling these graduate students that the number one threat to the homeland is white supremacy. Are you kidding me? The Anti-Defamation League keeps track, Kelly, of how many people are killed, extremists every year, and extremists don't necessarily are not necessarily all white. 25 out of over 20,000 homicides were killed by extremists. And if you want to play that game, Joe Biden, let's play that game. Most homicides are same-race homicides. Most whites who are killed by other whites. Most blacks who are killed by other blacks. However, every year, out of the 20,000 homicide victims, around 750 are black versus white or white versus black. 500 whites are killed by blacks, even though blacks are just 13% of them, and 250 blacks are killed by whites, even though whites are over 60% of the population. Now that's homicide. In terms of non-homicide crime, there are roughly 600,000 such instances between blacks and whites every year. 85 to 90% black per white victim, only 10 to 15% the other way around. Now, if Donald Trump went to some school and said the number one threat to the homeland is black supremacy or black crime, you and I would denounce him as a race-hustling demagogue, deservedly so. But Biden does it, and nobody says a word. It's outrageous. And shortly after Biden said this, Kelly, a racist white man gun and murdered 3 black people in Jacksonville, Florida. And of course, Biden made a comment on it. However, 2 months earlier in Tulsa, Oklahoma, black guy gets a gun, walks up to a white guy, doesn't know, pops him in the back of the head, kills him, goes to another part of Tulsa, does the same thing with another white guy, kills him, admits he did it to a white, and Biden didn't say a darn thing because it didn't fit the script. The script is we're oppressed, the man's out to get us, and anything that sounds contrary to that, the Democrats don't push that. And that gives black incorrect impression that we are under siege when it is not true at all. If we're under siege by anybody, it's the historical minority of young blacks that's preying on other black people living in the inner city. That's a far bigger problem, but Biden wouldn't go there.
So I think all hands need to be on deck, not just from the black community, but the white community, the Native American community. All communities need to be engaged to have that dialogue and come to that seat at the table, take a seat at the table of brotherhood to really start doing some good rather than tearing each other apart. Because we can't get anywhere if we're doing this. That's the left, the right, conservative, liberal. You and I, we've talked about things in the past, but we haven't even talked about politics today, except for the President of the United States and what he did at Howard University. So I want to ask you, is it all in politics? Is it a left? Is it the right? Is it the conservative, liberal? Or is it really a heart, mind, and soul matter?
It's all of the above, and we haven't talked about education. But crying out loud, Kelly, there are 13 public high schools in Baltimore, all located in the inner city. 0% of the kids can do math at grade level. Chicago, 53 government schools, all located in the inner city. 0% of the kids can do math at grade level. According to the National Report Card, 85% of black 8th graders can neither read nor do math at grade level. Half can't do basic reading. Yet the Democratic Party opposes school choice programs that have proven to work because they're wedded at the hip with the teachers' union. The teachers' union adamantly opposes school choice. Meanwhile, the party elite, Joe Biden or Barack Obama, have their own kids, Gavin Newsom, in private school, while denying inner city kids the right to have the same option. It is an absolute outrage, and that needs to be addressed as well.
You know, you lead me to point out and a shout out to a fantastic program in Chicago on the South Side at the Gary Comer College Prep, where there's a group called Champs. Bondale Singleton, a graduate of Oral Roberts University, my alma mater, but really just Bondale being a brilliant young man who was told by his father at the age of 5, and his father, by the way, was in the drug trade, and he told him as he was putting away his gun and some money from the drug deals made by that day, he said, "You're never going to do what I do. You are not going to be the kind of man that I am. You are not going to do drugs." And Bondale listened to him. He says, "Bondale, I know you're 5 years old, but I'm telling you this because you're never going to do this." That young man went on to become this great young man who's now working with so many youth. And the reason why I bring that up, Larry, is because it's an exception. We have to talk about the exceptions to the rule. What he was able to do is incredible because Champs, that program, went on to help a lot of students at Gary Comer College Prep, and that school itself is graduating 95% of its students who go on to college. We got to point that out too. There's a lot of bad, but when we see the good, let's elevate it so that others can really be attracted to the good things that are going on. So what say you about those kinds of programs and elevating them, just like at your church, going out there and helping people and finding that people are answering the door saying, yeah, what can I do to help my child be better and stronger?
Well, those programs work, and they've got a number of programs around the country that are similar to that. In New York, they have something called the KIP, Knowledge is Power program, where parents get involved. Kids literally sign something saying they're going to do their homework. Parents agree. If you don't buy that, you get kicked out. But they're taking the same inner city kids that were failing, and all of a sudden they're turning them around. Their test scores have improved, reading and math. Their graduation rates have improved. So there are programs that work. Divorce yourself from the teachers' rules and regulations, fire bad teachers, and be very demanding about what you expect of these kids. And these schools are in fact working. So if we can just move the money, if the money follows the child rather than the other way around, which is what I mean by school choice, we can improve the test scores of inner city kids substantially.
And I do look forward to that. A final question before I let you go. What's your hope for America?
Well, I think people are waking up. I'm looking at the numbers of blacks who are now inclined to vote Republican. Donald Trump got 12% of the black vote in 2020. He got 8% in 2016. It's a 50% increase. Among Hispanics, almost half of them now say they're going to vote for Republicans. We were talking about Gavin Newsom earlier. As I pointed out in my book, all the things he's done wrong. His numbers are the worst of his career, and people are citing crime and homelessness. So I think people are waking up. I think this war between Hamas and Israel has also sheds a lot of light on how whacked out and crazy on the left. And so I think a lot of Jews are beginning to peel away from the Democratic Party. So I'm guardedly optimistic. We recalled really left-wing school board members in the Bay Area here in San Francisco. So there's some shoots of hope here and there, but I think the world is in more chaos than I've ever seen it. But I'm guardedly optimistic that if we keep our heads straight and just keep preaching common sense, hard work, values, we'll make it through.
Larry Elder, thank you for joining us on America's Hope and sharing some insights about what concerns you the most about America. We got a lot more to talk about, so come on back.
Well, it's been my pleasure. God bless.
All right, God bless you.
I'm going to help you see again.
You said it was impossible.
Ah, there he is, the good doctor.
You're going to be on the cover of the Tennessee Herald tomorrow morning. You may get a date out of this.
Not with that picture.
Very funny.
Our pro bono office got a call from India. A little girl, 6 years old.
Apparently, street beggars make more money if they're legitimately blind. So the stepmother poured sulfuric acid in each of her eyes.
I'm going to help you see again, Kajan.
Is it true that multiple doctors declared your patient irreversibly blind?
Yes, but I developed this new breakthrough technology. Here we go. Do you see the light?
No. I can't see anything.
Well, that particular scene that you've just shown, that trailer that we've just shown you, is from the movie Sight, and it is really the autobiography of my next guest, who I consider just an incredibly gifted man, Ming Wang, Dr. Ming Wang. Let me just give you a rundown on some of the things that Dr. Wang has accomplished. Harvard, MIT, magna cum laude, by the way, PhD in laser physics, co-founder of Common Ground Network, co-founder of Tennessee Immigrant and Minority Business Group. And that's how he and I met. I was introduced to him by a mutual acquaintance of ours, and went to Nashville, Tennessee. And Ming, if it's okay if I call you Ming, because that's what I'm used to calling you. You and I met many years ago, even before COVID, and I was struck by your heart and your compassion and the love for what you do, and becoming one of the greatest doctors in the world to help people find sight. Let's talk about it. How did you come to this when it looked like it was going to be impossible?
Thank you. First of all, Kelly, thank you for the honor to be on your show. And your show is you're doing such a wonderful job with your show that brings so many important issues to the forefront for all of us as Americans to think, and how we can really, as you said, common sense approach and really solve problems and advancing our nation forward. So in terms of how I came to study about the eye, I grew up in China in a time called Cultural Revolution. From 1966 to 1976, the government shut down all universities and colleges of the entire nation and forcefully deported every single high school graduate to some of the poorest part of the country and condemned each one of us a life sentence of hard labor and poverty during what they call the Cultural Revolution. So over 10 years of Cultural Revolution, by shutting down all universities and colleges as such, they sent away to countryside and labor camp 20 million young people. And I caught that in 1974. I was 14, and I finished my junior high. I could not go to senior high because I was going to be sent away to labor camp, just like 20 million others, for life. Then I found out that if I could play a music instrument, a Chinese violin called erhu, E-R-H-U, or learn to dance, I might be able to avoid being sent away to labor camp because government still needed musicians and dancers for its song and dance troupe. So then government found that I was learning music instrument like some of the other young kids, really not for music per se, but to avoid being sent away to labor camp. So they stopped my learning of dancing and learning of music instrument. Then I was going to be sent away, just like 20 million others, to labor camp. Then I got lucky. 1976, the Cultural Revolution ended, and China reopened all of its colleges for the first time in 10 years. And with mommy and daddy, they really helped me. And without practically any senior high education, I was lucky enough to be admitted to University of Science and Technology, the MIT of China, in 1978. And then in 1982, with $50 borrowed from a visiting American professor with a Chinese English dictionary, knowing no one in this country, could hardly speak in English, I came to America, even though I was nearly penniless, very poor, but I was happy. Why? I was free.
Wow.
And I had good fortune attending some of the wonderful schools in America. I got my PhD degree in laser physics from Maryland and finished postdoc at MIT. Then I decided to be a good laser eye surgeon. So I got my second doctorate degree, this time in medicine, MD, from Harvard and MIT. And then in 1997, I was recruited by Vanderbilt University here in Nashville, Tennessee, and brought me to this beautiful city, Nashville, Tennessee, where I've been since then practicing ophthalmology, LASIK surgery, cataract surgery, and also we have a foundation to help blind orphan children from around the world. That's what the film site is about. The film site is based on my autobiography, From Darkness to Sight. I'm holding a copy of the book. It says that it's about the remarkable stories some of these blind orphan children were being able to help over the years. Their courage to come from darkness to light, but also at the same time, these patients have helped me, their eye doctor, come from my own darkness to light spiritually.
Ming, it's an incredible story. Every time I hear it, I have to be honest, I get emotional because one can only imagine what you had to endure at the hands of the CCP and how brutal communism is. And here you are, and what a gift that God has given you. And you actually talk about your faith as well, and how your faith has sustained you and prepared you for what you have accomplished. And the fact that you came to America, not even knowing the language, but you said you were penniless but still yearned to be free. When you tasted that freedom, you used it wisely. What do you think compelled you? What in deep down in your soul compelled you to use your freedom wisely? Since so many people tend to take freedom for granted.
Yeah. I think it's exactly as you said, Kelly. Kelly, who appreciates sight the most are those who used to be blind. And who appreciate freedom the most are those who used to not have freedom. And the movie Sight, which I'm holding a little card, co-starring Greg Kinnear, which is based on my autobiography, From Darkness to Sight, is the story of an immigrant who used to not have freedom and came to America for opportunity, for freedom, and have realized that, you know what, despite all the problems we have in America, we still got the best country. And people say, oh, Ming, give me a proof that America is the best nation. Don't we have so much problems? I say, yes, we have problems. We have lots of problems to solve. But we have the best nation because we have an immigration problem. Everybody wants to come to live here. Immigrants and refugees put their lives on the line so they can get to the other side. What's on the other side? An opportunity to live in America. But human nature is such that when we always have freedom, we do tend to take things for granted. And what are the evidence of taking the freedom we have in America for granted is the unprecedented polarization of our nation. We're so increasingly fixated on our differences rather than appreciating what we have in common. We're so increasingly unable to work across political aisles, racial divides, and ethnic divisions. And I realized that, I became a Christian while in America studying. You may have seen the movie, Kelly, God's Not Dead. In that movie, there's a little cute Chinese student who went from atheist to believer, and that was me in that film, God's Not Dead. So just like that student, I found Christ in this country, and I realized that the only way to pull our nation together is to realize the reason we're so polarized, the reason we're so unwilling to work together is because human nature for power and control. So the only way to come out of this deadly spiral of polarization domestically and internationally is to heed a higher calling, a calling from Christ. Christ wants us to be common ground seekers. The Bible said, blessed are the peacemakers. Actually, my pastor and I, Dr. Wright's books, I published a Common Ground Bible study, shows that it's God's calling for us to be common ground seekers, but also how to find the common ground. Can we love each other despite the difference? Can we put our interest of the nation and the Christ above interest of everything else?
But I love your story. And I think anyone who's watching this would have to understand the power of your story. You heard me talking to Larry Elder just moments ago, and you were talking about how it made good common sense. And you just talked about it as well. How do we break the division that we have in this country? It really comes down to understanding that we must find common ground. But look, I want to take a break because I want to come back to you and talk about the great work that you do with surgery and ophthalmology, and then how it's benefited so many people in need through your Wang Vision Institute and your foundation. I'm talking to Dr. Ming Wang. We're coming back right after the break.
I have this patient from India. She reminds me of some things in the past that I can't get over.
The present is made possible by the past.
A long time ago, back in China, there was an uprising in my hometown. Many bad things happened.
So we came to America.
Yes.
It's hard getting into medical school. But you coming from China, don't waste your time.
You cannot change the past, Ming. I feel like I'm stuck.
Hello, doctor. This is Maria.
We want to give her a chance to see again.
I don't even know if I can perform surgery anymore.
Stop it.
You need to just let go. I just don't want Maria to end up like a job.
Can only do our best. I'm with you, Ming. We can do this.
I refuse to believe there is no purpose.
I will be praying for you.
Kajal is teaching me that there's more to life than what you see. We have to keep going.
Thought you said it was impossible.
Can you see yourself, Maria?
I'm so pretty.
So again, you're looking at some of the trailer from the upcoming movie Sight, and the man that film is about is with us today, Dr. Ming Wang. He's talking to us from the Wang Vision Institute in Nashville, Tennessee. And you know, Ming, I've actually been to your institute, and the first thing that hit me was how calm and serene it is. And you actually invited me to witness you doing a surgery, an operation, and you said, "Watch this, Kelly. She's going to be able to see." And I was amazed. I was, to your point, I was able to see. You're helping so many people that were told they'll never see again. They'll never have sight again. Please talk to me about that and how this gift has enabled you to go out and help people pro bono in many cases.
Yes, thank you, Kelly. That, as you saw, experience at the Wang Vision Institute in Nashville, Tennessee, that we have the opportunity. I look at my practice, medical practice, as a vision ministry. That, you know, not only trying to restore physical sight in our patients, but also trying to impact them with a renewed sense of vision, the spiritual side. In the case of polarization we talked about a moment ago, that, you know, that what we are so divided because we forgot to appreciate God, forgot to appreciate America. And the focus is to help blind, orphan children from around the world. The film Sight is about that. It's about the remarkable journey of some of these blind orphan children that we have been able to help over the years. Their remarkable journey from darkness to sight.
That's fantastic. And beyond what you do medically, you've been able to help so many people throughout the community. For example, as I mentioned at the top of our interview, you actually help immigrants who moved to Tennessee. Talk to me about that and how you've helped new immigrants, new Americans, embrace each other and really hold on to this beautiful gift of freedom.
So I've been thinking, how could I unite these, you know, Latin Americans, African Americans, Asian Americans, business owners, and that help each other. You know, if immigrants, you don't help each other, who will? But also not just that. Ask ourselves this question: that as an immigrant, we have benefited from the peace and security and freedom that America has offered us. We have to figure out a way how to pay back. And the best way to pay back is, can we work together to build up this country, to keep America strong, to return America to its original definition? To me, America is the two cornerstones, which one is the Bible, one is the Constitution, the system of fairness, the law. So I established Tennessee Immigrant Minority Business Group about 10 years ago, uniting African Americans, Latin Americans, Asian Americans, and white business men and women together. We meet, we learn from each other, help each other business, but most importantly, our common ground there is, can we do something to help our adopted country, America, to rebuild America, to return to its original definition?
I'm so glad you're doing that, and I'm glad that you're sharing that with us, and it needs to spread throughout the country. Look, you have been able to be blessed. You know, there's a scripture that says your gift will find a place for you and find favor for you, especially when you use your gift to improve the lives of others. So as a result of your talent, not only in medicine, but also the Arhu and your ability to dance, you have been able to befriend some of the greatest musicians on the planet, most notably Dolly Parton, Kenny Chesney. You want to share and elaborate on how a doctor who has time to work with Dolly Parton and Kenny Chesney, some of the biggest names in country?
Yes, I've been very lucky. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, so it's the country music capital of the world. So I actually had the opportunity to performing laser vision correction on Dolly many years ago. But one day she walked in and she said, "Dr. Wang, I'm not here for my eyes." I said, "Okay, what are you here for?" She said, "You play this Chinese violin, erhu. I heard about that. Can we make music together?" I said, you know, country legend with me, what I call myself a closet musician. She said, "Yeah, we'll create something East and West together." So she took me to the studio called Blue Ocean Studio in Nashville, Tennessee. It was the first time I saw thousands, tens of thousands of buttons, all these music instrument buttons. And we sat together. She sang a country song called "The Cruel, Cruel War," about a story in the Civil War that a young lady wants to go to the war front with her husband, and in those days the women were not admitted to the military, so that he has to say no, no, no. At the end, she says yes. So it's a beautiful love story, and so she sang the country song, and I played the Chinese violin erhu, and we just created the most beautiful East and West combination.
So my final question is, what is your hope for America?
Yes, I've been thinking about this question for many, many years, because as an immigrant, as depicted in the film Sight, the story is about not having freedom before, and came to America and realized, you know what, we live in the most beautiful, the best nation on this planet, because so many people wants to come to live here. So I realized that we have so many problems in our society today in America: gun violence, opioid crisis, we have so many challenges. And to protect the freedom we have, to protect our living standard, to protect the way of life, we have to wake up as a nation to know that the only way to move our nation forward, the only way to restore America to its original definition envisioned by our founding fathers, which is the two cornerstones, the Bible and the Constitution, is to really realize that we need to try to work together. So I've been involved in, for example, putting Bible back in the school through our American Bible Project, through the teaching of American Revolution. I've been involved in putting the Constitution back into the 8th graders of every American. And I've been involved, as I told you, the Uniting the Immigrant Minority business owners, but also I've been trying to help scientists and Christians to work together, because I believe science and faith have common ground. The film Sight talk about, by uniting science and faith together, I've been able to develop a technology using placenta, not touching the fetal tissue or fetus without hurting a life, but using the placenta after the baby is born, and create the placenta contact lens, which has restored eyesight in millions of patients around the world, which is a part of the story of the film Sight. But all these to show that human nature will continue to drive us into this deadly spiral of polarization, that we are so increasingly fixated on differences rather than appreciating what we all have in common as fellow Americans. It is Christ. The only way to come out of this deadly polarized mess that we are in is to heed a higher calling in Christ. In the film, movie Sight, we talk about, at the end of my surgery, I did everything possible, still not working. Then, fortunately, I was humble enough to pray, to ask for Christ. And the Christ was finally that give me and the patient the blessing. So we need to recognize that only through heeding Christ, the calling for being a common ground seeker, to love each other despite the difference, that's the only way to restore America to its original glory, original depth. Thank you. Freedom.
Dr. Ming Wang, much love to you and respect to you for what you've accomplished. And certainly the film is called Sight. I recommend that everybody go see it. And just appreciate you being on America's Hope and sharing so much insight about how you have actually come to this country. You've taken hold of freedom and of hope and of love, freedom, and peace, as I'd like to say, and you've put it together at a table called brotherhood. And everybody is welcome to take a seat there. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Kelly. Honored to be on your show.
Honored to have you. I'd like to thank Larry Elder and Dr. Ming Wang. And my final word for tonight, based on what we've heard from our guests this evening, is that sight is a precious gift. And the inner vision that we have to see what's going on in our country and addressing what's wrong, to try to right it, that requires vision. Vision to be able to shine light into darkness and go against the daunting, overwhelming odds against us, to stand up and do the right thing. And that's to give hope to a child. hope to a parent, a mother, a father, bringing the family together, eviscerating the division, and uplifting the unity. Bottom line is, what's happening in our homes will determine the future of our nation. And if home is where the heart is, America, what's in your heart? As for me and my house, we'll have faith in God and hope and trust and love for each other. And then we'll spread it around. So keep shining hope, America. Till next time, good night. My America. We agree to disagree, but still live in harmony because we are a family. God bless your America and my America.
United we stand, divided